Before we begin, let me be crystal clear about something. If you need a content warning before watching a YouTube video, this probably isn't for you. If you think words can be literal violence, you might want to click away. But if you remember what it felt like to be truly free, even just for a summer afternoon, then buckle up. We're about to talk about the last generation raised by wolves. We're talking about Generation X, not the marketing demographic, not the people born between arbitrary years. We're talking about a specific breed of human that's going extinct. The ones who knew freedom before smartphones turned everyone into tracked livestock. The ones who understood that survival wasn't a participation trophy. It was something you earned every single day. The world loves to talk about boomers and their refusal to let go of power. The world obsesses over millennials and their avocado toast. Gen Z gets endless think pieces about their mental health and TikTok activism. But Gen X, we're the invisible generation, the forgotten middle child. And honestly, that's exactly how we like it. While everyone else is screaming for attention, we're getting things done. While they're arguing about who's more oppressed, we're running the companies, managing the teams, and keeping civilization from collapsing. Let's start with a geography lesson. I want you to imagine leaving your house at 9 in the morning and nobody, absolutely nobody, knowing where you are until dinner time. No phone, no GPS tracker in your pocket, no Ring camera catching you as you leave, no Find My Friends app, no text message check-ins. You just vanish into the neighborhood like smoke disappearing into air. For modern parents, that scenario is a true crime podcast waiting to happen. That's a missing person case. That's every nightmare they've ever had. For us, that was Saturday. That was every day of summer. That was normal life. We operated under one supreme law. Be home when the streetlights come on. That was the entire safety protocol. The whole thing. No GPS coordinates, no hourly check-ins. Just one rule. You had to develop an internal clock that knew when the sun was dropping. You had to know the terrain well enough to calculate your route home from anywhere in the neighborhood. You had to have the speed to make it back before those sodium lights buzzed on. Because if you missed that window, you weren't getting a gentle conversation about boundaries. You weren't getting a timeout or a discussion about feelings. You were getting consequences. Real ones. This created something researchers now call unsupervised autonomy development. We just called it not getting caught. Think about what that actually required from a child's brain. You needed to memorize your neighborhood like a tactical map. Every street, every alley, every shortcut. Which fences had loose boards you could slip through. Which yards had dogs that would actually bite versus dogs that just barked. The shortcuts through construction sites and woods that weren't on any map. The abandoned lots where teenagers hung out and you needed to avoid. You were navigating the physical world with nothing but your brain and your feet. You developed spatial intelligence that kids today will never have. You learned to read the sun's position to estimate time. You learned to judge distances. You learned which routes were fastest and which were safest. You became a navigator, a scout, a survivor. All before you turned 10 years old. And let's talk about the hydration situation. Because this is where you separate the real ones from the pretenders. If you're thirsty today, you grab your insulated water bottle with a motivational quote on it. Something about manifesting your best life. We had hose water. But drinking from the hose wasn't just about thirst. It was strategic warfare against parental detection. Going inside meant risking being seen. If a parent spotted you, suddenly you had chores. You got trapped in the house. Maybe you'd have to help with laundry. Maybe you'd get stuck watching your younger sibling. Maybe your mum would remember that you promised to clean your room 3 days ago. The inside was enemy territory. The outside was freedom. So you drank that warm, rubber-tasting, probably lead-contaminated hose water, and it was the most delicious thing on earth because it tasted like staying free. If you can taste that metallic rubber flavor right now, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That's the taste of independence. That's the taste of a childhood that can never happen again. That's the taste of freedom in its purest form. This environment created a generation with independence scores that are off the charts. We don't need micromanagement at work because we didn't have it at age 8. We figured out how to survive entire summers without adult intervention. We can probably handle a project deadline without someone holding our hand. We managed territories. We policed our own disputes. We created our own hierarchies and social structures. We were little nomads operating in tribes of other little nomads. Now let's talk about your brain. The modern brain, especially the young modern brain, is a dopamine slot machine. It needs constant stimulation. 15-second videos, notifications, endless scroll, likes, comments, shares, engagement. If a modern kid has to sit still for 30 seconds without input, they start to physically vibrate. Their nervous system goes into withdrawal. They reach for their phone like an addict reaching for a fix. Gen X mastered something that's becoming extinct. We learn to sit with boredom. Not just tolerate it, master it, weaponize it. We grew up in a world where boredom was the default state of existence. 3 TV channels, and 2 of them were showing golf or news. No internet, no games in your pocket, no YouTube, no streaming, no social media, no group chats, nothing. If it was raining and you couldn't go outside, you entered what we called the void. The endless afternoon of nothing. You'd stare at the ceiling, you'd watch the fan spin, you'd read the cereal box for the 50th time, memorizing every ingredient, every vitamin percentage. You'd reorganize your comic books by issue number, then by condition, then by publisher. You'd lie on the floor and count ceiling tiles. You'd see shapes in the popcorn texture. You'd create entire universes in your head just to pass the time. And then you'd make the fatal mistake. You'd walk into the kitchen and say those 2 words, "I'm bored." And your mum would deliver the phrase that shaped our entire psychology. "Go find something to do, or I'll find something for you to do." That wasn't a suggestion. That was a threat, a promise, a warning. Because her version of something to do involved cleaning baseboards with a toothbrush, organising the garage, pulling weeds, scrubbing floors, manual labour designed to make you regret ever complaining about boredom. So you learned. Fast. You initiated what we call the creative desperation protocol. Your brain had to manufacture its own entertainment. You built forts out of couch cushions and blankets. You invented elaborate games with complex rules. You took apart electronics just to see how they worked, even though you could never get them back together. You wrote stories. You drew maps of imaginary worlds. You created entire mythologies. You taught yourself to juggle. You learned card tricks. You did anything to avoid that kitchen and that threat. This is where executive function comes from. When you strip away external entertainment, the brain has to create its own. It has to become generative instead of consumptive. It has to produce instead of just absorb. Neuroscience backs this up completely. Constructive boredom is the incubator of creativity and problem solving. The most creative people in history often talk about long periods of boredom in their childhood. That void is where innovation comes from. We learned to sit with our own thoughts without panicking. We learned that silence isn't empty, it's potential, it's a canvas, it's raw material waiting to be shaped. We developed what psychologists call analog patience. We learned to wait, really wait, not wait 3 seconds for a page to load, wait, weeks, months, years. If you missed your favourite TV show on Tuesday night, you waited 6 months for the summer rerun. If you took a photo with your camera, you waited 2 weeks to get the film developed, only to discover your thumb was covering the lens in half the shots. If you wanted to hear a specific song, you sat by the radio with your cassette tape, finger hovering over the record button, waiting for the DJ to stop talking so you could capture it. You couldn't stream it. You couldn't download it. You had to hunt it like prey. You waited for mail, real mail, letters from friends, packages, magazines. You waited for phone calls on the one family phone attached to the wall with a cord. You waited for library books to come in on interlibrary loan. You waited for movie rentals to be returned so you could rent them. You waited for the new video game to come out, saved your money for months, and then waited in line at the store to buy it. This rewired our dopamine system completely. We're not conditioned for instant gratification. We play the long game. We understand that anticipation is part of the reward, sometimes better than the reward itself. We aren't frantic. We don't need immediate feedback. We can sit in a meeting without checking our phones every 30 seconds. We can stand in line without losing our minds. We can work on projects that take months or years to complete. We're comfortable in silence because we were forged in it. And in a world of shattered attention spans and dopamine addiction, that makes us incredibly powerful. Now let's talk about the body. The physical sensory experience of being a Gen X kid. If you're a parent today, your primary job is chief safety officer. Corner guards on every table, outlet covers, baby gates, helmets for everything, knee pads, elbow pads, rubber matting under playground equipment. The modern world is soft, rounded, padded, sanitized. The 70s and 80s were made of concrete, rusty metal, splinters, and pure, unforgiving gravity. We didn't have safe spaces. We had the structurally questionable ramp. Every Gen X kid at some point found a piece of plywood and some cinder blocks and decided to launch a bicycle into the air. We saw Evel Knievel on TV and thought, I can do that. We didn't calculate physics. We didn't assess structural integrity. We didn't consider angles or velocity. We just pedaled as fast as possible and hoped for the best. And usually we crashed. Hard. Face planted into asphalt. Scraped layers of skin off our knees and elbows, twisted ankles, broke wrists, got the wind knocked out of our lungs, bit through our lips, chipped teeth, got concussions we never told anyone about. And here's the crucial part that defines everything. Nobody called an ambulance, nobody sued anyone, nobody called a lawyer, nobody called Child Protective Services. You laid there on the ground, you did a quick systems check. Breathing? Check. All limbs still attached? Check. Bleeding? Probably, but not too bad. You checked if your bike was okay. You assessed the damage to both machine and body. You got back up. Maybe you limped home. Maybe you kept playing. This is where we developed risk calibration. You can't teach a child the difference between scary and dangerous with a PowerPoint presentation. They have to feel it in their bodies. Scary is climbing the big oak tree to the high branch. Dangerous is climbing the dead branch. You only learn the difference when the branch snaps and you fall 15 feet. Scary is going down the steep hill on your skateboard. Dangerous is going down that hill with loose trucks. You learn the difference when you get speed wobbles and eat pavement. We learned physics through direct feedback. Fire burns, knives cut. Concrete is unforgiving. Glass shatters. Metal rusts and gives you tetanus. Electricity shocks. Ice is slippery. Heights are dangerous. Speed kills. We learned these lessons in our bodies, not from a safety video. This sounds barbaric to someone raised in bubble wrap, but it was essential data entry for the nervous system. Because we experienced minor trauma regularly, broken bones, stitches, concussions we walked off, burns, cuts, we stopped fearing it. We realized pain is temporary, and we're more durable than we think. We learned our bodies can take damage and heal. We learned that injury is survivable. This is why Gen X doesn't panic easily. It's not that we're brave, it's that we have a higher threshold for what constitutes an actual emergency. When a crisis hits at work, when the server crashes, when the market drops, when systems fail, younger colleagues look around for an adult to fix it. Gen X looks at the problem and says, well, at least nobody's bleeding. Let's figure it out. Our scars were trophies, battle damage, proof of adventures. If you showed up to school with a cast on your arm, you were a legend for 6 weeks. Everyone wanted to sign it. You got to tell the story over and over. The bigger the injury, the better the story. We carry that physicality forward into adulthood. We understand the world has sharp edges. You can't bubble wrap reality. You can't safety-proof life. So when we see trigger warnings on college syllabi or people claiming words are violence, we just blink in confusion. Words aren't violence. Words are just air shaped into meaning. A pedal to the shin is violence. Getting launched off a seesaw onto gravel is violence. A hockey puck to the face is violence. We know the difference because we lived it. We have calibrated our threat assessment through actual physical pain. We developed what researchers call appropriate fear response. We know what's actually dangerous versus what just feels scary. This allows us to navigate chaos without freezing. We don't have anxiety attacks because the barista got our order wrong. We save our adrenaline for actual threats. We're not triggered by uncomfortable ideas or challenging conversations. We're triggered by actual danger, the way humans are supposed to be. Now let's fast forward to 2025. If you listen to media narratives, Gen X barely exists. We're the forgotten generation. All the attention goes to boomers refusing to retire and clinging to their positions. Gen Z filming their anxiety attacks for TikTok engagement. Millennials writing articles about why they can't afford houses. But while everyone's fighting for airtime and attention, Gen X is quietly running everything. Look at the actual numbers. Gen X holds a disproportionate percentage of leadership roles globally. We're the managers, directors, VPs, CEOs, founders. We're in our peak earning years, between 45 and 60 years old, the prime of professional life. We have the highest home ownership rates among active workers. We're funding retirement accounts while simultaneously supporting aging parents and adult children who moved back home. We're the sandwich generation, squeezed between caring for those older and younger than us. We're carrying the entire economy on our backs while everyone else argues online about pronouns and participation trophies. We're paying the mortgages. We're funding the 401s. We're keeping the lights on, literally and figuratively, and we're doing it without complaining, without seeking validation, without posting about it for engagement. And don't get it twisted, we're not tech illiterate. That's the biggest myth about Gen X. Gen Z thinks they invented the internet because they were born with tablets in their hands. Wrong. You adopted the internet. We built it. We were there at the beginning. We transitioned from rotary phones to smartphones. We went from typewriters to word processors to computers. We learned DOS and coded HTML by hand in Notepad. We built websites in the 90s. We created the infrastructure your apps run on. We're bilingual in a way no other generation can be. We speak analog and digital fluently. We can fix the printer and configure cloud servers. We can read paper maps and use GPS. We can balance a checkbook and use Venmo. We can write letters and send emails. We can have face-to-face conversations without looking at our shoes and run Zoom meetings. We remember life before the internet and we mastered life after it. We're the bridge generation. We have the work ethic and discipline of boomers without their technological helplessness. We have the tech fluency and adaptability of millennials without their fragility and need for constant affirmation. We're the perfect hybrid. We show up. We do the work. We don't need a chief happiness officer checking our vibes. We don't need mental health days because an email had the wrong tone. We don't need safe spaces in the office. We just need the problem defined and the tools to solve it. We're the ones keeping the lights on. We're brand loyal, but only if you earn it. We research everything before buying. We read reviews. We compare prices. We're skeptical of corporate nonsense and marketing speak because we grew up watching commercials lie to us. We saw toys that looked amazing on TV but were garbage in real life. We learned to spot scams and manipulation. We trust, but verify. Always. So call us whatever you want. Forgotten generation, slackers, whatever. Fine. Keep forgetting us. Keep underestimating us. While you're making viral content, we're making money and decisions. Your boss is probably Gen X. The reason your company hasn't collapsed despite all the chaos is because someone from our generation is steering the ship with the same independence and problem-solving skills they learned 40 years ago on a bike ramp. Now, I know what you're thinking. Gen X sounds emotionally unavailable, cold, unfeeling. You're not wrong, but you're missing the point entirely. We score high in emotional stability. That means we don't ride the roller coaster of modern discourse. We don't go from zero to outrage over a tweet. We don't catastrophize. We don't spiral. We don't have public meltdowns. We keep our composure. This isn't lack of empathy, it's selective empathy, practical empathy, strategic empathy. If you come to us with a problem, we won't just validate your feelings and tell you it's not your fault. We won't sit there and affirm your victim narrative. We'll listen. We'll assess. And then we'll ask the most important question. Okay, that's rough. What are you going to do about it? To younger people, that sounds harsh. That sounds like gaslighting or toxic positivity or whatever term is trending. To us, that's respect. That's love. That's treating you like a competent adult with agency over your own life. We're not going to infantilize you by pretending you're helpless. We're going to empower you by assuming you can handle your own problems. We value results over feelings. We don't care about your truth. We care about the truth, the objective, verifiable truth. We're the firewall, the buffer, the translation layer between old and new. We explain to boomers why certain jokes don't land anymore and why the workplace has changed. We explain to zoomers why showing up on time actually matters and why you can't cry your way through a presentation. We're navigating the most complex cultural shift in human history, bridging the suck-it-up generation and the it's not fair generation. And we do it with a level of skepticism that keeps everyone honest. We call out nonsense when we see it, regardless of which generation it's coming from. We're not loyal to age groups, we're loyal to competence and reality. We're the glue holding society together. Without us, the generational civil war would have already started. Boomers and zoomers would be at each other's throats. We absorb the shocks. We translate. We mediate. We keep things moving forward. We're the cool aunt or uncle who'll buy you a beer but also tell you when you're being ridiculous. We have no problem with uncomfortable truths because we grew up in a world that didn't shelter us from reality. So where does that leave us? With a realization. If you grew up in the 70s and 80s, you're part of an exclusive club that's permanently closed for new members. You lived through a specific window of human history that can never be recreated. A time when childhood was wild and unsupervised, when you could disappear for hours, when you could fail without an audience watching and recording, when boredom was normal and phones were attached to walls. You possess a skill set that's becoming rare in the human population. Independence, patience, risk tolerance, practical competence, emotional stability, problem-solving ability. You're a limited edition, a discontinued model. There will never be another generation like us because the conditions that created us no longer exist and never will again. Don't let anyone tell you your feral upbringing was trauma. It wasn't neglect. It was training. It was preparation for a chaotic world. It made you capable of handling whatever comes next. It gave you tools that people raised in safety and supervision will never have. To my fellow Gen Xers, keep doing what you're doing. Keep running things. Keep being the bridge. Keep drinking the metaphorical hose water. Keep solving problems without asking for permission. You're doing better than you think. And to younger generations watching this, look, you do you. We're not your parents. We're not asking for permission or validation. We learned a long time ago that nobody's coming to save you. You save yourself. You figure it out. That's the only way forward. We're done here. Peace out.